Today's lesson is 4.01, Congruent Figures. And we know what congruent means, things that are the same. Figures is going to refer to polygons, two-dimensional shapes made up of three or more closed figure made up of three or more straight sides. So when we have congruent figures, if they are moved or if they're rotated or if they're flipped, they stay congruent. Moving a shape doesn't change its shape, it just changes its position. So let's suppose we have this quadrilateral ABCD and I slide it to the right and rename the points W, X, Y, Z, so that this angle and this angle are the same, this angle and this angle are the same, this angle and this angle are the same, and then the fourth angles are also the same. Okay, and we'll also say that this side matches this side and so on. Okay, now we can write a congruence statement stating that these two shapes are congruent. If we name this one ABCD, notice I started at this corner and I went clockwise around the figure. So I need to start at the same corner, the corresponding corner, and go clockwise to name the second one. When we do that, it enables us to look at just the name of the figures and not the pictures to tell which angles are the same and which sides are the same. So just looking at the names of the figures, we can see that angle A and angle W are going to be congruent angles, corresponding angles. Because they're in the same place in the name, they're in the same position, they are also going to be congruent. That shows that they are in the same position on the picture. Okay, we can do the same thing with the sides. Corresponding sides are going to be in the same position as well. AB and WX. Okay, we look at the pictures. AB and WX are the same, are corresponding sides. They're congruent too. Okay, BC is going to be congruent to XY. CD is going to be congruent to YZ. And then DA is going to be congruent to ZW. The last one and the first one, last and the first one. So when we have a problem that when they give us the name of the shapes instead of the picture, we can still answer questions about it. So let's look at a couple of examples. Suppose we have two pentagons. We don't know what they look like, but we know that they are pentagons, and we know that these two pentagons are congruent. So what angle is congruent to angle U? Angle U is the next to the last angle in the name. So the next to the last angle in the name here would be angle M. Those two angles are going to be corresponding angles, and they'll be congruent. We can do the same thing with sides. What side is congruent to KJ? So we find KJ, it's the second one, then the first one. So go to the first figure and do the second letter and the first letter, so that would be SR. Okay, so we can name parts that are congruent just by looking at the name of the figure. We can also do math. Suppose we have triangle WYS is congruent to triangle MKV. And we know that the measure of angle W is 62 degrees. And the measure of angle Y is 35 degrees. And they ask us to find the measure of angle V. Now we can draw a picture, and on the notes that I posted, you're going to see a picture. We can also just look at the name of the figure. WYS is congruent to MKV. W is 62, Y is 35, and we have to find V, which is the same thing as S. Now in a triangle, the three angles of a triangle have to add together to make 180. Do you guys remember that rule? So if we add 62 and 35, we get 97, and then subtract that from 180, we get 83. So since S is 83, then V is 83. Okay. Now sometimes we're going to have two figures that are connected and they're congruent, but they're like slid. Well, maybe they're slid or maybe they're rotated or flipped. We're going to see this a lot with triangles. We've got two triangles that are connected. And let's say angle A and angle E are congruent angles. And angle B and angle D are congruent angles. These two angles are also going to be congruent because they are vertical angles. Very good, if you answered that. Now, if we don't have any sides that are marked congruent. However, we can look at the angles and how they're marked and use those as clues. So this side has an angle with one marking and an angle with no marking. So if I go to this triangle and I go to the side with one marking and no marking, I see that this side would be the corresponding side. So those two sides are congruent. Now let's suppose we have this information on here. They want us to find the value of x. To find the value of x, we need an equation. To write an equation, we need to look and see what property we know. We know that these two are the same. Anytime things are the same, we can set them equal to each other. Then to solve, we're going to move the smaller x first, then move the number, and we find x is 15. Okay. Now, I want to show you a couple of problems that are already printed out, so you don't have to write this in your notes unless you just want to. Suppose we have this problem. We've got two connected triangles, and we know that this angle is 74, this angle is 5x, and this angle is 3x plus 2. Well, these two angles are going to be the same amount. So that means this angle is also 3x plus 2. All right, so now I'm going to draw this triangle over here just so we can see just one triangle. So this angle is 74, this one's 5x, and this is 3x plus 2. So when we have a triangle, remember the rule, all three angles have to add together to make 180. So if I add these together, I can combine 3x and 5x to get 8x. And I can combine 74 and 2 to get 76. Then solve the equation. Okay, so that's what we do when we're looking at angles. Notice they all have degree signs. So we're talking about angle measures. But look at this one. We're not using degree symbols. So these are marking how long the sides are, the lengths of the sides, not the angle measures. And these two sides are the same measure. So my equation would be 2x equals 10. So x equals 5. Now, one other kind of problem you need to be aware of, and that is like this. When you're not given the picture. If we don't have the picture, we need to know that know what the names of the figures are so we can see which angles are corresponding. These two quadrilaterals are congruent, so we have angle B is 3y, angle G is y plus 50. Well, angle B and angle G are in the same position in the name, so that means they're corresponding, so they are congruent. If they're congruent, then this expression has to equal this expression. And then to solve this, I'm just going to move the smaller y over and divide by 2. Okay. On number 15, we're looking at side lengths. CD, I'll use a different color. CD is at the end of this name, and HJ is at the end of the second name. So that means this expression and this expression are congruent. So we set them equal to each other. 2x plus 3 equals 3x plus 2. Move the smaller x. And move the number, and we get 1 equals x, or x equals 1. Now, on Google Classroom, you have 2 worksheets that are posted. You need to do the practice problems and then use the key to check your work. You've got to know how to do this. Okay, I'm not taking a grade on the practice. However, you need to do the practice so that when we take the quiz, you will be more prepared. If you have any issues or questions, you can email me and I will be happy to open up a Google Meet if I'm available. If it's during school, we'll have to see if I'm already in a meet. 6th and 7th hour are still to come, and so I will also do these lessons during those class times. Have a great day.